Now, Chad, because I know you're going to love this moment, right? We got to see the new economy come into effect, but you're winning here. Have a reset. I'm going to give credit to Lucas for that one. Chad, what did you make of it? Because is it the big like, oh, this is a reason why some things are being more difficult for teams to adapt to and change to, or is it really not that big of a factor now?
So there's an element.
You love it.
There's an element of fear mongering on my behalf, and it's because I want to avoid the worst case scenario happening in a matchup where it just like blows up and everybody just goes, this is fucking dog shit, this sucks, this I want to avoid that if possible, and what we need to do to be able to avoid that is define the narrative. And when I say define the narrative, what I mean is we need to be able to work out what it is that and when I say we, I mean the entire Counter-Strike community, Valve, the players, the professionals, everybody wants to either avoid or have in the money system. Now, before, there are a lot of problems, and they've slowly been adjusted over the last, 6, 7, 8 months, however long it's been since they changed that pistol economy thing. We need to be very careful about how we look at all of this information. This is the same with every piece of information in Counter-Strike. The org change getting put in front of everybody's face and going, here, this is an amazing weapon, use it, is the perfect example that we can always use at people either being too naive to look at what sticks out as the problem or what sticks out as something which could be really good but nobody even looks towards. Same was when the UMP was good but nobody used it, and then I think when I mentioned this last podcast, like Get Right or Flush or whoever it was started using on Cobble and Drop Zone, and I was like, oh, this is viable, now we're going to use it more. With the money situation, we didn't actually see it play into any dire regard in that in Blast at all, and we didn't have like a huge amount of matches over those 2 days, and still a lot of those players are unaware that tally counts up, that it keeps going, the 4+, that it keeps going. I don't know how many threads there have to be about it or how many people have to make posts about it before they understand that, but that's one thing that still a lot of people weren't quite clear on. Now, if you look at the ENTS versus Liquid game, it actually happened to both of them late in their respective halves, right, when they were on the CT sides. It happened to both of them, but Liquid could have really fucked ENTS. They could have really crippled them, but ENTS actually saved a couple of guns, which allowed them to rob one away and make sure that they could buoy their economy a little bit more. But all of that aside, the new money change, this was a conversation that I was having with Peter, and he pointed out that it's not a problem with the new change, it's a problem with the old money system. And I know that different figures in the community have brought up the idea of removing the $1,400 loss bonus altogether, and that could be a debate that could definitely be had. But I think the one thing that we could all agree on is that we want to avoid having a hard reset that revolves around a double eco scenario. Now, the reason for that, and like I always talk about me being a purist of the game, and playing since 1.6 and earlier days like that, but having a hard reset in Counter-Strike, especially when it can hamper you so late in a game, it used to be the losing team that would get affected, right? If, for those who aren't aware, you're getting owned 7-0, you finally win a round, so you've had max loss bonus, and then you get reset back down to 1,400. Well, now that has been flipped around, and the reason that I take such big exception to it being flipped around onto the winner is purely because I don't think that you should be punished for winning. I don't think, and people will be curious about that, like, oh, what do you mean? But it would really have to delve into a lot. And I think Lucas actually has the graph of the Vitality versus North game on Nuke, which could be, we could bring that up, and that could be a good example for me to lightly explain it. I'd need to, get a whole different plethora of ways to go through this. What my the thing that I'm most scared of is the Doomsday scenario. So just so everybody can, I say this every fucking podcast, I'm not against fucking change. I like change. Change is good. It's great for everything.
Yeah.
Anyway, let me bring up this stream link so I can see the graph that's up here. So what we want to focus on here is actually the last 5 rounds of the game. So it was a really big comeback being mounted by Vitality on their CT side. That you can see there, Lucas, you see that yellow one there that's on its own in the middle. It's at round 22. My eyes are going, guys. Round 22, so that one there. So that's a round that was won, and North could still continue to buy because their loss bonus had built up with the 3,400. The plus situations, they could still get gun rounds, and these were all very close rounds. Coming down to the wire, clutches, bombs were getting planted. Lots of money continuing to go into the back pocket of North here because the T side, everything is already cheaper, and every time you get that bomb down, you're getting plus 800. Now, what I don't like here is that if you're getting the 3400 as your loss bonus and the CTs are not winning by defusal, then they're only getting 3250. And if these rounds are really close, the CT's weaponry is more expensive. I lost my notepad. I actually lost it in transit, for fuck's sake. But the weaponry across the board is more expensive. You know, a Molotov for T is only 400 for CTs, and Incendiary is 600. A fuse kit comes in at 400. The Ts don't have to buy that. They get the bonus of getting the bomb down with the 800 I just spoke about. All these factors play into now the team on an amazing comeback who's being kept super honest. Something that JW actually messaged me about this. He said that what teams are doing now is they can go for like SMG buys with a 3400 and they can kill 3 of you and plant the bomb and your economy's fucked, but they can get a full gun round on the board next time. And people might say that's more exciting in a way, but I think that if you completely remove any reward for winning, any reward for actually putting rounds on the board, then you're rewarding the wrong thing. So the change that I would like to see come in, and there's lots of room for debate on this. The first thing is I don't think that it should keep counting up. I think once we hit the 3400 marker, when you do get reset again or you lose that consecutive round, you shouldn't get 3400 and it shouldn't like continue. I guess at the late stages of the game, it might not matter as much, but my point is you want to be able to keep them honest at some point. You want to be able to make sure that they maybe have to take like a pistol upgrade, but they can't go for a full buy almost every time. So if you make it so that if they lose that round, then they're always going to go back down to 2900. 2900 is still a shitload of money when we know how much damage like a scout can do. If you get 2900, then 3400, you have so much for a buy. You take like, you can buy a scout, you can have a guy like buying utility and nades, utility and like pistol upgrade. So there's a lot more options and diversity I think comes into play there. So if you don't cap it, that's one option. Obviously we need to see it play out more. This is just my initial thoughts. And then the other one is, for the CT side, completely remove the $1,400 loss bonus. And that is because of all those factors that I was talking about with everything costing more money. So if you remove the CTs will always default to $1,900 as a loss bonus. Sure, they're still going to have to take an eco, but they're not going to have to take a double eco. They're only going to have to take one. And then you leave, the reason that I'm saying leave the Ts at 1,400 is because what you actually do with the Ts then is you're not incentivizing them to buy deagles and try and kill as many of you as they can. You're incentivizing them to buy P250s and a flash and trying to get the bomb down and get that extra 800, which will then facilitate the buy further down the track. So I think you want to keep that as an option. There's so many things to be talked about here. There's so many different opinions. I think we definitely need to get a lot of Counter-Strike minds in for a proper debate. But these are just a couple of my early thoughts. And just again, I really want to reiterate the point that I don't think that this change is bad. I just want to really avoid that doomsday scenario that you kind of see getting painted here in this picture of Vitality doing such a fantastic job to come back, being reset super late. And you can see, Lucas, can you point out on the graphs, show the massive dip with the dotted line. That massive dip right there is their economy in the bin at the end of the game. They're fucked at this point. Like, you are completely fucked on the CT side, especially on Nuke. All the protocol nades needed to stop top rushes, the Molotovs needing to be used on almost all key parts of the map. It just becomes a nightmare. And that's the one thing that I want to try and avoid so that we can make sure that, you know, people aren't getting screwed by those little things. And that is a problem with the old money, not the new money. I just really want to point that out. That's something that that Peter really instilled in me when we had our conversation yesterday or the day before, Saturday. I
think I mean, you just have to look at basically add up the first couple of loss bonuses, which is 1,400 and 1,900. Add them up, that's 3,300, right? For the CT side, what are you going to get for that? Nothing, basically. So if you don't have any other like income, you're not going to be able to buy after losing a couple of rounds. In that case, like if you haven't already saved up something beforehand, you're not going to have enough to buy off just 2 loss bonuses, right? So that I think is the core of the problem, because at the same time, like as CTs though, although everything is more expensive, it is much more likely for you to actually save up something in a loss, because STs, if you lose a round, you're not going to get any money from losing the round. You're just going to get 0 if you survive and you lose the round. As CT, you actually still keep getting that money, which is basically a something that's in the game just exactly to help CTs counteract the problems with their economy, with how much everything costs, because they do have something like 600. Everything costs basically something like 600 more compared to the Ts. So that I think is the bigger problem. Just the actual base loss bonus alone, that doesn't really allow CTs to buy even after racking up a couple of rounds in a row. So I agree with you there to get rid of the 1,400. But generally, I feel like those the late game scenarios will only happen if you're, I mean, not only, but they're most likely to happen only if you're like trying to get too many guns out of the way, or trying to go into retakes that you shouldn't go into, and just like incentivize saving a little bit more in situations where it makes sense, right? So that's another thing. We still have like those things that help CTs buy up more often, even if they have like more expensive guns and just utility and everything.
Well, they obviously have like the tighter choke points and stuff, and they can make more weapons work to close down certain positions, whereas the Ts, they have to use utility
they
more so to
expend a lot more to get something. So that's
on
another
most
thing.
of the maps anyway.
That's how Counter-Strike just works. It's just CTs. Yes, everything's more expensive, but there are also things to counteract that.
What do you think
you
about
expend a little bit less, you get that bonus for saving.
What do you think about the bonus stacking? Do you think it should stack, or do you think it should?
I don't think
cap
so,
out?
because you should. The thing is, like, if you keep losing after 5-0, if you keep losing past 5 losses in a row, even if you like with the round loss bonus in place, where you obviously, yes, especially as T, like you put the bomb down in one of these scenarios or one of the late rounds, you're going to be able to buy up all the time basically. And if you keep losing past that, I don't see why you should keep getting like a free pass for losing these rounds, and just like keep getting advantages further late into the half for losing 8 rounds in a row or something. I feel like that's too much. I think 5 is more than enough for you to kind of like for the slider to work basically.
I think we like need to unfortunately not play devil's advocate, because Valve are definitely not the devil. I think that people who like demonize them really don't look at the bigger picture here. But a lot of their data does come from matchmaking. You know, the pro scene is one element of this. So if they're seeing games going in matchmaking where it is super one-sided and they feel that these people need to be rewarded to get back into the game, that's kind of where they're going to, you know, get a lot of their information from. So I spoke to a couple of players in Sao Paulo just briefly, kind of just briefing them on my Doomsday scenario. Some of them weren't aware about the thing stacking still. A few of the other things, I spoke to MBK and JW quite a lot in Twitter DMs, and they gave both 2 different perspectives. Both thought that there needed to be changes, but they were from 2 different positions. So it was cool to hear all those different opinions, and I'd love to be able to kind of get some form of a summit. I know they have the player association, but it'd be cool just to hear all of their opinions, just to know what they think, because this is something that we really need to do like I said at the start of my little rant, but it's about defining the issue before we change something, because of before we make a change, right? We really want to decide where we want to take it, because right now we're knee-jerking towards like the symptom comes in and we're straight to the doctor thinking, fuck, how do we fix this? But we're not looking at, we don't, put the right food into our body in the first place. We need to think about, with a lot of these problems that have cropped up in the past, how we can go about avoiding them in the first place. So if everybody agrees, like I don't know if everybody does, but if everybody agrees that double eco should just not be a thing in Counter-Strike, which I can get behind that, then we need to change that base level of money. There's a couple of other things as well, like my brain just had it and it just dropped it. Fuck, I'm getting the jet lag.
Understandable.
I'm trying to think, because it was a good point.
Look, the main question is, what did Valve attempt to do with this change, right? And how does the stacking help with that? Because I'm not sure that it necessarily does help with what we thought was like the reason for this change, right? Which is to basically avoid the double ecos or whatever. At least that's what we assume the aim of this update was, just to help teams like get back or come back from big disadvantages. But there has to be a cap at some point to how much you're gonna allow teams to fuck up, basically. Because like if you lose 8 rounds in a row and then you start coming back, you shouldn't keep getting like, okay, you lose 7 rounds in a row, you win the next one, or next even 3 basically, and you keep getting the max loss bonus the second you lose the next round. And that I feel like is a little bit overpowered, because that basically allows you to buy up for the rest of the half, no matter what happens, basically, like every single round. So that's
When I say
Not a fan.
incentivize losing, like when I say that, that's obviously like the most hard stance you could possibly take. When I say I don't like the fact they incentivize losing. Now, if you're still winning the rounds, you're winning the rounds. That's how people will look at it, and I think that's how Valve would probably think about it too. But Counter-Strike, for me, is a game that I'll say it. I'll say it again. I'll say it until everybody hears me fucking say it. The way that when I talk to Anders says, like, if you had Counter-Strike and if you took it to a game developer now, any game developer in the world, and we said, hey, we want a game that's 5v5, we want it to be like, an even game when, with all these different elements in it, but if it's a 1-on-5 situation, we still want the player to be able to win it. How would you solve that problem? And most modern game developers would solve that problem by buffing the HP or the ammo or the armor, or like give the guy like a super gun, or fucking spawn in some fucking dogs so the guy can run around and kill like free players with dogs or something, Like, that is what a modern game developer would do. But the great thing about Counter-Strike is a 1v5 is possible. Do the other people need to fuck up? Yeah, but that is the beauty of the game, that you need to play a situation perfectly, and other people need to make mistakes that you can take advantage of to win those situations. And that's why we love Counter-Strike. I really want us to avoid the fact where every single round in this game is the same. If we want to play that, I played that professionally. That was my fucking life. I played the CGS. We started with $16,000. There still had to be ecos because we had teams who'd buy fucking 3 orbs. But you'd like eco once in that entire system. And as well as that, we only played MR9, so first to 10 rounds, guys. If you want every round of this game to be competitive, so it has guns and there's no layers, there's no depth, there's no controlling the economy, there's no making sure you punish people for dumb mistakes, if it no longer becomes like interesting to go for retakes, or it no longer becomes interesting to save, and you may as well just fucking do one option every single time, then every single round of Counter-Strike becomes exactly the same. And one thing that Zedicus brought up, and I had a similar thought process to it when I read his tweet, was from a storytelling perspective, the narrative completely shifts. Because in the late stages of a game, and somebody tweeted at me and disagreed with this, and that's fine, you can disagree, that's cool, this is just my opinion, is that if somebody wins a 1v3 late in the game, but you know that the team that you just, normally a 1v3 situation late in the game results in somebody getting money fucked, or you just like taking away so many guns that they're in a hard position. If it results late in the game that you win a sick 1v3, it's amazing, like it blows everyone's mind. But you no longer have the same effect on the economy and the ebbs and flow of the game. What you're actually detracting from there is the excitement level, because it doesn't mean as much. You could just play the next gun round and then they just beat you. Okay, well, now they just beat you. You're 1v3, it doesn't count. The cool thing about that was the consequences of that 1v3, not just the fact it was a sick play, but what it meant for the overall storyline of the game. And if we end up finding Counter-Strike in a position where every round is the same, or every round is basically a gun round, guys, we don't need 30 rounds of CS anymore. We don't need it anymore. It's not necessary. We can play less rounds. We could have less round time. We could change so many different things, because you're moving away from the core elements that made the game exciting. And I'm not saying Valve are doing that, and I'm not saying that this update does that. I'm just saying that we need to make sure that if everybody finds the same things that I'm saying as exciting elements of the game, we need to protect them in some regard. And some of the old things were shit. They've been adjusted, they've been changed, and they're no longer in the game. And I'll agree with these changes. And I think, there's some things that are good, there's some things that are bad. But we just need to make sure that we never move too far away from what makes Counter-Strike the most exciting esport for everybody watching this podcast right now, for everybody who tunes in and watches the major, for everybody who gets excited, for everybody from Australia who wakes up at 4 a.m. to watch a fucking CS game. We can't move too far away from that, because we'll just become like every other game that is just bullshit. Like, I shit on games like Call of Duty. They play 5 rounds. They don't even have footsteps, guys. The best clutch in one of those stupid fucking esports awards was a Call of Duty clip. And I didn't realize. I was like, didn't the guy hear him running around? Someone explained to me that there's a fucking perk in that game where you can't hear footsteps. And I'm just, the skill level in Counter-Strike is so deep. There's so many elements. There's so many nuances. There's so many details to this game that I love, and I love to explain to you. But when they get removed, it like fucking kills me a little bit, and it should kill you guys too, because you guys fucking love this game, and we don't want to just have a game. We basically become like
everyone else.
Yeah, fuck that. We have the most unique thing in the world. Let's fucking keep it.
Economy is definitely the biggest part of Counter-Strike that it has over anything else, basically. Because I don't even know about any other game that has this deep of an economic a feature to it. basically, and that's something that makes Counter-Strike really special. But just to before we annoy any more fan bases at large, like Call of Duty fans and stuff, I'm gonna get back to the original discussion about how to fix so that we don't have double ecos. I feel like just removing the 1400 bonus is more than enough, just because of the, like I said, if you add up like the first couple of round loss bonuses, which would have been 1900 and 2400, as it is now after pistols, basically, you're allowed to buy up after you lose, like after you take one eco. If you take a full eco, if you lose a round, take a full eco, you're gonna have 4300 no matter what. With if the 1400, the first bonus was removed completely, and it just got pushed, and you just racked it up over 4 rounds instead of 5. I feel like that would be more than enough, just because of how much you can buy for that amount. Even as CT, sure, you're not going to be able to get everything, but you're going to be able to. Teams buy at this sort of price point all the time, just because they can't let the other team rack up too much economy. They already buy at 4300. If everybody has 4300 in a team, they're going to buy in 90% of cases, just because of trying not to let the other team get too ahead.
Yeah,
basically.
Especially with the org now
as
well.
Is more. I'm sorry.
Especially with the org, like it means less utilities needed.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just it already incentivizes you to buy up with that amount, and you're going to get a solid buy anyway. Maybe a couple players will get the M4 or like an AUG, and the rest will get some UMPs or some sort of an SMG or like maybe a FAMAS. By the way, can they fucking
just fix
address the FAMAS, please?
Just the burst fire.
It doesn't even have to be the burst. Like, okay, sure, that would probably help, but I think the stats of the gun aren't particularly impressive either. Like compared to some SMGs, like sure, you get a little bit more range, but like if you're a little bit creative, you can just get rid of that with an SMG completely. You can just play a little bit closer angles and a little bit different setups, and you can just use an SMG that's just going to be better because of the movement bonuses, basically. That you can run around a little bit.
For those who don't remember 1.6 days, go and watch, go into
Neil.
YouTube and type Zneel,
Yes.
ZNEEL, famous, and watch him. And he was a fucking master at that.
He was basically in 1.6. He was a guy who preferred FAMAS over the M4,
Yeah,
no matter what.
It
matter what. He never bought the M4. Basically, he only bought the FAMAS because it was actually quite viable in 1.6 because of the burst.
Yeah. I guess you made
cool.
brought up a good point though about the weapons though. So I guess we can maybe just delve into this if we can, Banks.
At this point, like my fucking I disappeared at the beginning of the economy segment, hence why I haven't spoken so much. Literally, I said about my fucking toilet. There is now a big fucking crater in the floor, which is why I ran off, because it hurts. So I'm guessing I'm fucked anyway. So we can just let this shit run, because I'm calling the plumber out this bitch.
Quite literally.
Every sense.
So the org, I think a lot of people are still asking for that to go up in price. I think that you could, if you want, maybe chuck an extra 100, 150 on it, just because it still is. I was looking at a couple of stat lines, and it's being used more. I know that AWPs aren't used by everybody, but I think it's detracting from the amount the AWP is used, because there's certain players who are normally primary AWPers who I'm seeing use the org over the AWP. Obviously economic situations come into that, but there's certain times with that. So I don't know. I like it. I like the org, but maybe if for argument's sake, if people really wanted to adjust the price a little bit there, I do like the fact we're seeing more of the M4A1S though, right? Because I think people are using it situationally, it's a playstyle thing, like what you just spoke about with the FAMAS there. It becomes obviously you're not going to get as many spam down kills as quickly because it doesn't have the same fire rate, but people use it more like a laser beam, like they used to take those kind of more stop and fight duels. And then I've even seen players with those extra fire bullets, especially WSG, be able to finish off a kill or two that they wouldn't normally. So I think it's adding more versatility for sure.
I like that a lot, but the FAMAS I remember doing some research about this when I was writing about the UMP, and kind of coming up with reasons why the UMP was used at that time, because it was used at the expense of a FAMAS, basically, because the price point was quite a lot lower, but the stats were very high for what the gun actually was, right? It was 1600, right? Was the UMP. No, not even that. That's at one point. That was changed, I think. But anyway, I was doing research about that, and the FAMAS hasn't been changed since something late 2013, if I remember correctly. I would have to check, but it hasn't been touched forever, basically.
Yeah.
So that's a big issue that I see with the FAMAS and just like with Valve completely ignoring the weapon, because that I think would help diversify weapons a lot. Because sure, some players actually buy the weapon, but most of them will just prefer an SMG over it just because of how cheap it is and how close in stats it is to a FAMAS.
And we think of any player that still picks up the FAMAS like on a
regular basis. I see Elige, like Elige buy it up sometimes when he doesn't really have it, and like I see a lot of players buy it, but just not very often. It's just very, very rare.
Yeah. When I was still playing, I was stubborn. I'd keep buying it, and Azza would always be like, "What the fuck are you doing, bro?" And I was like, "It's good, you know. I like it." He's like, "I will 1v1 aim map you right now with any SMG, obviously not the fucking Bison, and I'll beat you." Obviously, he's a better player than me. There's no arguing about that. But he fucking rinsed me. I was like, Jesus, all right, I won't buy the FAMAS anymore. I got the message. I fucking learnt my lesson after that one. So, yeah, for me, until they do something with it, it is pretty trashed here, unfortunately.
Just a little need above people are asking at the same time if we're talking about FAMAS.
I think the Glil's fine. Glil's like is almost as good as an M4, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's quite similar, and
it just doesn't feel as potent as the AK because it's not.
No, I mean,
it's not.
Like,
there's no
the
comparison.
AK, you get so many advantages like in damage and 1.1 shots and stuff. So that makes sense. Like, I'm not saying the FAMAS should be on par with an M4. It's just it should be either better than the SMGs, or at least like as cheap as the SMGs for people to actually be incentivized to use it, because at this point there aren't many advantages that it has. Basically over the SMG, it's basically just range. It's not even damage wise that it isn't very much better.
Give us a FAMAS that was very similar to, like, I remember you were able to hold, like, say Long A on Dust 2 with a FAMAS and 1.6, and you would literally, as long as you're just on point, you know what you're doing with a weapon, you can just rip them apart. Like, we should fucking get to that point. Let's have that. That'll make it more viable. I'll take that. Viable burst FAMAS. Right, how much more time do you guys want to spend on this now before we go on a Star Series, boys?
I mean, there isn't much else to talk about, honestly, in terms of like weapon diversification. By the way, they also made the shotguns cheaper. I'm not entirely sure that it really affected anything so far.
We saw it more at WSG than we did. We saw it more at WSG than we did in Sao Paulo.
Yeah, at Blast I didn't really see many people. Maybe it has to do with the economy as well, because like obviously we're seeing a little bit, but like quite a lot more gun rounds, like significantly more. So there aren't really that price points where it makes sense to buy a shotgun over an SMG or over a rifle. You're not going to do it. I feel like Valve only did this for like early rounds and anti-ecos and stuff like that, because otherwise it doesn't really make sense to buy it.
It's really good on a force buy, right? Especially on the CT side. You think about the places on maps that you could really use to lock down positions, and almost if you're getting like a kill with some of them, you feel like you've got your worth, right? So maybe we'll see it come into play a little bit more in the future. But all in all, not a lot to report about the shotguns at the moment.